Good morning, recruits. I would like to greet those of you here at the West Pines headquarters as well as those at the Cooper City headquarters. And before we begin today, I'd just like to address a few things. First of all, I've been rather impressed at how you have been fulfilling your missions the last few weeks, and I have to say I'm a little bit surprised. But you've done well. In fact, I think you should congratulate yourselves. Give yourselves a hand for your efforts over the last 2 weeks. That's a little too much, okay? Don't let it go to your head. Let's not get prideful. But some of you have suggested to me, you said, Special Agent Barnes, look, I'm not sure I've got what it takes to be a full agent. You know, if I look at my life's kind of a mess. You know, I'm not sure I've got it all together. I just don't know that I can be an agent. Well, that's what I'm here for. Agents, I am here to guide the way. And as you can see, my life is pretty much together and not at all a mess. And I'm pretty much a model agent for you. Oh my goodness, I've just put papers with everywhere. Terribly sorry I've made a mess. Don't look at this top secret information. Please avert your eyes. Nothing to see. Stop looking at me. Okay, this is papers. It's a little bit of a mess. And there, see, everything is taken care of. Put that back here. Take that. Now, hopefully, we'll move right along. Hopefully, you've brought your manual with you today. We're going to be needing to take a look at that. And we're going to be looking at a part in the book of John. And before we go there, I would like to start with a story. And the story takes place with some agents in Denver. These agents got together and they said, agents from all over Denver got together and said to themselves, how can we accomplish our mission together? And what's interesting about that is it was a group of pastors from all different churches that came together. And they thought to themselves, we've got a mission that is bigger than any one of us can accomplish together or any one headquarters can accomplish together. It's a mission but if we work together, it's a mission that we can accomplish. So what was happening is in Denver is very similar to in South Florida, what we are a part of as a church called Church United. It is a larger group of churches from different backgrounds, different denominations coming together saying, how can we work together to reach our city? And so a group of pastors, about 20 Denver pastors, came together and they did an offsite. 20 different churches, 20 different pastors, and they're asking themselves, what could we do all together to reach our community? What is it that we could do together? Because think about 20 different churches. Think about all of those people. That is probably tens of thousands of citizens in Denver. It's probably, millions of dollars, thousands of volunteers. Think of what could be leveraged with all of those churches together if they focus their efforts on one thing to reach their city. That's pretty profound. And so actually when we here in South Florida, Church United, heard about what they did and heard about what they came up with, we invited one of their pastors into town and we asked them what they decided to do. Like, what was the one thing? Because they picked one thing to focus on. All of the churches in Denver that were participating, it was dozens. This is the one thing we're going to focus on. And so they told the story. This representative from Denver told the story. And he said, what we did was we did an offsite, 20 pastors, and we actually invited the mayor from the local city. We invited the mayor, and we asked the mayor, if there was one thing we could do, from your opinion, your vantage point, what would it be? And for starters, they agreed on what the issues were in the city. So they talked about, look, there's plenty of issues. There is, in pockets, there's deep poverty. There's at-risk children. There are elderly shut-ins. There is substance abuse. There's mental health issues. They went on and on and on, all down the list. And they all agreed. These are the issues. if we could just put all of our focus on one thing, what could we do? And the mayor says, well, here's what I've always thought. And he shared one profound concept that was so simple that when he left, and it was just now the 20 pastors in the room, they were stunned. Like, that's exactly right. That's exactly what we should do. And what they thought to themselves is, it's not only so profound, so simple, it's been right under our nose this whole time. Now, I'm going to tell you what the mayor said in just a moment, but I want you just to hold on to that, because to get there, I want to show you what John says. So go ahead and open up to John chapter 1. If you don't have your Bible, I have my slide projector here, and I'm going to walk through John chapter 1. Here we go. Here's what it says. In him was life. He's going to be talking about Jesus here. In him was life, and life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to bear witness about the light, that all might believe through him. He was not the light, but came to bear witness about the light, the true light, which gives light to everyone who comes into the world. Now, as you look at this, there is one word that John repeats about a half dozen times in just those few verses. It's the word light. He's referring to Jesus as the light. Now, John is opening up his book, and he's introducing one of his main themes that he's going to be covering all through not just the book of John, but all through his various writings. John wrote, just as a reminder, John wrote the book of John, which is the story of Jesus' life and ministry. He wrote Revelation, which is revealing who Jesus is and how all things come to fruition in the end. He wrote John, he wrote Revelation. He also wrote 3 other books, 1 John, 2 John, and 3 John, all letters to churches. Those are all books written by John. And the theme of light and dark is a theme all the way through John's writings. And it's very clear that his point about the light is that Jesus is it. Jesus is the light. In fact, in John chapter 8, it says, Jesus himself says, I am the light of the world. I mean, it's very explicit. He's not hinting around. He even said in these opening verses, he says, the light that is Jesus. Jesus is the light that came into the world. So he wants to nail this truth so thoroughly that all the way at the other end of his writings, the very end of Revelation, he's talking prophetically and poetically about the nature of heaven itself. And it says heaven has no need for a light source because Jesus is the light. Now, as to whether that's he's intending that literally or metaphorically, that's a discussion for maybe another message, another day. The point being, he is very explicit that Jesus is the light. In all of his writings, there's light and dark. Jesus is the light. Now, what does he mean by Jesus being the light? Like, in what sense is Jesus the light? And as you watch how he develops this theme of light and darkness, you see that he describes darkness like this. The darkness is where you stumble around in the dark. Now, we touched on this a little bit last week, but that is a very relatable metaphor. Even in your own house, I don't know if you've ever had something like this happen. You're in your own house, your own apartment, your own condo, the lights are out, but you know your way around. You don't need the lights on. but you're walking around. But if you've ever been in your home with the lights off, and maybe you're going to reach for a door to open it up and walk through the doorway, but if you're off just a couple inches and you walk past it, you walk right into the ajar door. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's never happened to me, but apparently it's happened to you, and that's embarrassing, okay? If you are just a little bit off and you're even in your own home where you know where everything is, or maybe you don't run into something, but maybe one of your kids leaves a single Lego on the floor, because stepping on a Lego is scientifically the most painful thing a human can endure. Okay? One little Lego left on the floor. You know your way around, you're walking aimlessly, but you step on that Lego, it is brutal. Why? Because the lights are off. You're stumbling around in the dark. And it's a beautiful metaphor on a richer sense to describe humanity. And this is also relatable. Because all of humanity, we're just striving to figure out the way through. And one generation will be like, this is how you do it. This is the way. This is what's important. And then the next generation says, no, that's ridiculous and archaic. It's got to be this. And then they go this way. And then the next generation says, no, that's embarrassing that you used to think that. No, it's really this. And each generation coming after the next thinking they have actually found the way, but then they trip and fall and stumble over something. And every generation kind of looking back rather than learning from previous generations, or trying to tend to like stumble this way and then stumble that way. But not even on a macro level, on an individual level. This is so often how it feels in life. It's like, man, I just need to know what to do here. I need to know where to go with my career, or how to turn the light on and just understand where to go with my marriage, or how to parent my kids, or how to handle my finances, or what to do in this with a health crisis that I'm facing, or whatever it may be. And wandering around, you feel like you're feeling your way through the dark, not knowing which guide and voice to follow. He describes darkness like that. And in essence, what he's saying is, the darkness is the sinful world, all of us trying to go our own way, trying to figure it out, but stumbling in the darkness. He said, but God provides a light, and that light is a person. It's Jesus. So in what way is Jesus the light? He's illuminating the realities in this world of humanity. He's illuminating the right path. He's dealing with sin and darkness, and he's illuminating. He's not just saying, follow me. He's actually coming in to defeat darkness itself, to defeat and pay for sin and rise again from the grave. He defeats sin and death, the things of the darkness. And in that way, his light is just breaking through the darkness, and he calls us into the light. See, the light reveals, it illuminates, and the light is Jesus. So John takes this theme of light and dark, and he works this through his whole narrative of Jesus in really a beautiful way. He's taking these stories about Jesus, and he gets to the end of the book of John, and he says, look, there are so many stories of Jesus that I could share. You could fill up every book in the Bible. I mean, every book in the world, he says, with Jesus. Every book could be filled with Jesus, with stories of what he did. But he has picked certain stories, and what he did was he picked certain stories, and some of them have these prominent light and dark themes. And let me show you what I mean. Let me give you an example. This is John chapter 1 that we're in. If you go to John chapter 3, one of the most famous encounters Jesus has is with a guy by the name of Nicodemus. Nicodemus is a Pharisee. It says he's a ruler of the Jews. It says that he teaches all of Israel. So I want you to imagine household name, top among rabbis, a Pharisee of Pharisees, probably sits on the Sanhedrin. I mean, elite. I want you to imagine like maybe he's one of the most famous preachers of his day and seminary professor like in one. I mean, this is elite of the elite as far as religion goes. And he wants to meet with Jesus. He's got some questions. And John points this out. But notice that Nicodemus came to Jesus at night. He's too afraid to come in the light. He comes in darkness because he doesn't want anyone to see him. And he goes and meets with Jesus in the darkness. This is a key theme. And what we see as John tells how that conversation goes is it turns out Nicodemus is not just in literal darkness. He's in the dark about Jesus. And Jesus says things like, you have to be born again. And he's like, I don't even know what that means. And Jesus is like, how are you a teacher of teachers? And you don't even know these, you can't understand these words that I'm saying. And you've got the famous, and God so loved the world, he gave his only son. He says this to Nicodemus. And Nicodemus leaves still in the dark. Now, it appears later, much later, that Nicodemus may become an outspoken follower of Jesus, but that's much later. At this point, he's still in the dark. Now, you flip over a page and you're in chapter 4. Jesus has another encounter. He's in Galilee, which is the north, and he has to travel down to Judea in the south, which is where Jerusalem is. And right in the middle is a zone called Samaria. And the Samaritans, you've probably heard that term before, the Samaritans who live there in the middle are not Jewish people. In fact, Samaritans and Jewish people, they despise each other. They look down on each other religiously. They look down on each other ethnically. They want nothing to do with each other. In fact, a good Jewish rabbi who was in Galilee, like Nicodemus, would have, if he was traveling to Jerusalem, gone all the way around Samaria, all the way to Jerusalem, would not have even gone through Samaria because he doesn't even want to run into a Samaritan at all. That's what a Nicodemus would do, but what did Jesus do? He travels right through Samaria because he's got an appointment to keep. And he shows up at a Samaritan well. And he tells his disciples, go into town to find something to eat. They're probably very uncomfortable going into a Samaritan town. They would have immediately, by how they're dressed and how they're acting, everyone would have known that they are Jewish men. But he's sitting alone at the well. And it says that it's about noon. Broad daylight. As bright as it can be. It's so light out. And who comes to meet him? Or who comes to, not knowing they're going to meet him, but comes to the well? A woman. Now, in that time period, a Jewish rabbi, would not talk to any woman in public. And the custom was not even to teach a woman the law. Now, let me just be really clear. That's not what the Bible says to do. That was the culture of the day, unfortunately. And it was cultural practices like that Jesus obliterated. So a woman approaches, and Jesus engages in a conversation with her. Now, there's a couple things to know about this woman. It's a woman, a Samaritan woman. So she's not the right, according to the typical Jewish rabbi, not the right religion, not the right belief system, not the right ethnicity, all of those things. Jesus, not the right gender, but Jesus talks to her. And not only that, but the fact that she's there at noon suggests one of two things. Because the custom would be to come in the early morning when it's cool and you have water there at your house all day. So the fact that she's there at noon is either she's not welcome to travel with the other women, or she's been out so late at night that she's just now recovered and going to the well. And either one are a strong possibility because Jesus finds out as he's talking, well, he already knows, but he reveals as he's talking to her that this woman is a notoriously loose woman going from lover to lover to lover to lover. And so Jesus is talking. I want you to juxtapose these two chapters. You've got Nicodemus, like teacher of the teachers, like Pharisee to the Pharisees in chapter 3, and you've got a woman, a Samaritan woman, a outcast, notoriously sinful Samaritan woman coming to meet with Jesus. But one is in the dark and one is in the middle of the day at its brightest point. Do you see these two next to each other? Chapter 3 and chapter 4. But unbelievably, maybe, it's the Samaritan woman that goes back into town and she leaves in the light, clear about who Jesus is. She says, this is the Messiah. He knew everything about me. And she's just stunned that he would still be there and show her love and talk to her. And she goes and tells everyone in the town, and it says the whole town came out to meet Jesus and be taught by him. She became an evangelist that day. One was in the dark, one was in the light. You see this juxtaposition about dark and light. Let me give you one more. Later in John, it's the Last Supper, Passover night. Jesus has just washed the disciples' feet. He's starting to say things, as John records, that have been very concerning for the disciples. And one of his first things he says when they're seated at the table, he says, one of you will betray me. And they all start mumbling and whispering. Like, who? Is it me? Is it him? Like, who is it? And Jesus takes a piece of the bread and he dips it and he says, the one to who I give this to. And he hands it to Judas. And this must have been a moment that for the rest of their life probably sent a shiver down their spine. He said, what you plan to do, go do quickly. And John says, Satan entered into him at that moment. Not a demon. Satan. Judas gets up, walks out the door, and John says, it was night. It was dark. It was a dark night. And Jesus says, next thing he says, where I'm going, you can't follow. But I'm giving you this commandment. As I have loved you, you love one another. And Peter blurts out. And he completely misses the whole thing about love. Like, as I've loved you, go love one another. He just skips over that, misses it altogether. And he says, I will go anywhere with you, Jesus. I'll even lay down my life for you. What kind of statement is that? I mean, he's just contradicted Jesus. But that's a statement about, he's beating his chest. This is about my self-worth. This is about who I am. Let me show you who I am. I don't know about these guys, but let me talk about myself and who I am, Jesus. I want you to see my fervor. I want you to see my passion. I want everyone to know my commitment. I mean, what is this? This is just self-righteousness just exuding out of his pores. I will go to my death. Now remember, it's nighttime. Just said that. And then Jesus says back, the rooster will not crow before you've denied me 3 times. Did you notice that language? He says the light will not come back up. The sun will not rise. It'll still be this darkness. And while you're in there, while we're in this darkness, you will have denied me 3 times. And what happens? They go to the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus gets arrested. He goes to the high priest's place. John and Peter go into the courtyard. Peter is sitting around a charcoal fire. John gives that detail. Anytime the Bible gives that level of detail in the narrative, you got to lean in and be like, okay, this is going to be important. Who cares what kind of fire it is? Well, it's important. Peter's around a charcoal fire, and he gets asked 3 times, hey, weren't you with Jesus? And 3 times he lies there in the dark. 3 times. I don't even know the man. And then he hears the rooster crow, which means the sun's about to come up. And he weeps bitterly in the dark. Now, all the way at the end of the book of John is the final story John tells about Jesus. It's in John 21. Jesus has already died on the cross. He's already risen again from the grave. He's already appeared a couple times to the disciples. Well, there's this one occasion, it's back in Galilee. And Peter says, I'm going fishing. And so Peter and 6 other disciples get into the boat. And it says it's nighttime. That's when they'd fish, but it's clear anyway. It's nighttime. And they fish all night in the dark and get nothing. And John's really clear. Just as the sun was rising, Jesus was standing on the beach. And Jesus calls out to them in the water, children, did you catch anything? No, we caught nothing. They don't recognize him yet. And he says, throw your nets on the right side of the boat, which would be about the most obnoxious piece of advice you could give a seasoned fisherman. But maybe they're starting to suspect, or maybe they're that desperate. And they throw their nets over the right side of the boat. And it says there's such an incredible catch of fish that all 7 of them cannot pull it into the boat. And John says, I looked up and I just said, it's the Lord. And Peter puts on his coat and it says, throws himself into the sea. And he swims to shore and he comes up and there is Jesus as the sun is rising. And there's Peter coming out to see Jesus soaking wet. And he looks just over Jesus' shoulder and Jesus has built a fire. What kind of fire do you think? A charcoal fire. And there's already fish on there. And he says, but bring some of your fish too. And it says they all hauled this huge fish. John says there was 153 fish. I don't know what that means, but he wanted to make sure we know. He'd probably never forget. He said it was so many that the nets miraculously did not burst. And Jesus asks him a question. He's going to ask it to him 3 times. Why do you think 3 questions? He's restoring Peter from his 3 denials. And he says now, as the sun's coming up, he says, Peter, do you love me? Remember that part that Peter just kind of skipped over to blurt out his self-righteousness? That commandment about how I've loved you, now you go love others. And Peter just kind of blurted over that, missed it, kind of forgot about that, overlooked it because he was just beating his chest in self-righteousness. Jesus goes all the way back to that point and says, Peter, let's start again. Do you love me? Yes, Jesus, I love you. Feed my sheep. In other words, care for others, love others. Ask him again. Ask him a 3rd time. 3 denials in the dark, and now 3 restorations in the light, all around a charcoal fire. And John ends with this story. There's a little more to the story, but John ends to that. See, here's what John is doing. He's introducing to us this theme in John chapter 1 about light and dark, and it's a theme that's going to play out through the entire rest of the story. What is he saying about light and dark? It's an invitation. He's saying, look, I'm calling you out of the dark into the light. I'm calling you out, whether you're the Nicodemus or you're the Samaritan woman, whether you're the Peter, similar to Nicodemus, full of self-righteousness, or the Peter broken and shamed by his sin. He's calling them out of the darkness and into the light. He's telling them the gospel. He's showing them the gospel. It's an invitation to us. Come out of the dark into the light and simply follow Jesus, who has overcome the darkness. He's overcome sin and death, and he's calling us into the light. He's calling us to walk in the light. See, let's ask this question. If Jesus is the light, got it. What does it then mean for us to walk in the light? What is the purpose of that? Like, what does that look like to then, I know the light, but what does it mean to walk in the light? And John is going to develop this very explicitly through his writings, but it goes back to that same concept that he told them back when they were at the Lord's Supper, at the Last Supper. He said, as I've loved you, go love other people. I mean, look at this. I want to go to 1 John 2, verse 10. Here's what it says in 1 John chapter 2, verse 10. Whoever loves his brother, watch this. Whoever loves his brother abides in the light, and in him there is no cause for stumbling. You're not stumbling around in the dark if you are loving your brother. That is how you live and walk in the light. Notice what he doesn't say. Walking in the light is not, hey, clean up the mess in your life. It's not, hey, get all put together and nice and religious. That's not the essence of walking in the light. The essence of walking in the light, what it means to have received the love of God and then walk in the light, the essence of it is to love. The essence of it is not clean up the mess. Now, if you're hearing this, and maybe you identify a little bit more with the Nicodemus type, maybe you identify a little bit more with the Samaritan woman. If you identify more with the Nicodemus type, hearing that walking in the light is not chiefly about getting more religious and cleaning up the mess in your life, that's going to push you and stretch you, and you may not like hearing that. If you identify more with the Samaritan woman, you say, hey, that sounds right to me. It should be more about loving others and not just simply cleaning up the mess in your life. But here's the essence of what Jesus is saying. Man, if you've been loved by God and you love God, you will then love other people, and all of the other pieces of your life start to come into place based on that priority. Walking in the light is to love other people. Why? Because that is why he gave us the light anyway. Jesus said to Nicodemus, he says, God so loved the world that he gave his only son. The fact that we've been brought into the light was a great act of love from God. Can I hit this from another angle? John's not the only one who talks about this. But let me just quickly show you. This is how Matthew does it. Jesus words in Matthew 5. He says, shine your light, do good works, so that as people see them, they glorify God in heaven. It's in Matthew 5. Shine your light through the good works that you do. Well, what does that mean, good works? As Matthew plays out, he explains this. There's a time when Jesus is asked this question. And it's the Pharisees, and they're trying to trap him, and they say, hey, Jesus, what is, of all the commandments, what's the most important? And they're like, watch this. I mean, because if he picks one, there's the 10, and if he picks one, then we'll be able, what about this one? We're going to get him. What's the most important of all the commands? And they're thinking Exodus 20, the 10 commandments, but Jesus goes to Deuteronomy 6, the Shema, and says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And they're all like, yeah, he pretty much nailed that one. There's nothing we can say. So even on you want to have a battle of the law with the one who gave the law? It's his. He outsmarts them, but he's not done. He said in the second, which you didn't ask, but since we're talking, the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. And then he says, all of the law and the prophets, the entire Bible, is built on those two things. Love God with all you've got, love other people as yourself, and everything else falls into place. So he walks this out. A little bit later, Jesus says, he warns them about the Pharisees. He says, watch out for the Pharisees. And he has a whole chapter where he just roasts the Pharisees. He says, what they preach, they don't even practice. You ever heard that phrase, practice what you preach? That's where it comes from. He says they're full of empty religion, trying to get their whole life all put together, no mess here, and tries to put their whole life together, but it's all empty. And then right towards the end of the book of Matthew, that he says, watch out for the works of the Pharisees. And then he shows you a work. Remember, he says, shine your light, that they may see your good works. He shows an example of what good works look like. He says he's at the home of Simon the leper, which I don't know if the guy still has leprosy or did have leprosy, but either way, it's not a place a Pharisee is going to go. And Jesus is at dinner, and a woman comes in and breaks open an expensive alabaster jar and anoints him. Incredible act of generosity. And they're all like, whoa, why is she doing this? They're murmuring, that could have been given to the poor. There's so many things that could have been done. Is this really the best use of that? And John actually, we're talking about Matthew, John actually calls out and says, it was Judas who said that, and he doesn't care anything for the poor. He was stealing from the common purse. He wanted the money in the purse so he could take it for himself. And Jesus says, why are you bothering this woman, this beautiful work that she has done? Okay, here's the essence of what Jesus is saying. When you realize God's love for you, and you walk in that love, you're so filled by the love of God that you love other people. And he says right there, John records it at the Last Supper, he says, this is how they're going to know that you are my mathetes, my disciples, by how you love one another. The essence, and I love people, I'm not mean. Well, John's really clear. Love to him is generosity to other people. It's giving of yourself to other people. In 1 John chapter 3, 16 through 18, he says, look, if you see someone in need and you have the means to help them, but you withhold them, you don't sacrificially say, here, let me meet that need. He says, if you don't do that, do you understand the love of God? Because that's how you received love. At great, unimaginable cost to God, the Son was crucified and dead and buried and rose again. And at great cost to himself, he loved us. And so that's what love is. It's this extraordinary act, like the woman with the alabaster jar. It's an extraordinary act of love or of generosity. It's sacrificing myself for another. It's giving of myself for another. And he says, that is the marker of how the world will know that you're following me. That's what it looks like to walk in the light. Here's the essence of what this passage is saying. It's to show love to people that are all around you. There's ways you can give of yourself, not just a moment of a kind word, although that can be powerful. But there's people all around us that we can show incredible acts of love, giving ourselves to another. There's ways that we can give of ourselves to people all around us, and there's needs. You don't have to go far. There's people all around us that have needs. If anything, maybe we just need to pray, God, not send me a need, but open my eyes to the needs all around me. Some of you, there's people around you. Some of us have family or friends that we've prayed for. We've tried to live a godly life in front of. We've tried to talk and share the gospel with and share the truth. But for some of you with those friends and family, you long to see the day that they come to Jesus. Maybe that step is an act of self-giving love towards them because there's people all around, and that's how we walk in the light and shine our light to those around us. You know, at Christmas time, it's associated with light, isn't it? We associate Christmas with light. That's one of the unique things about Christmas. It's all about lights. And there's light that we put lights on our Christmas trees. At Christmas time, we put lights around our houses. We sing songs about Christmas lights and Christmas candles. In fact, I often will go with my kids. Rebecca and I will take the kids and we'll go drive around and look at Christmas lights, and we'll find out which houses have put up like a bazillion lights, and we look at it. As a kid, I used to just be dazzled, like, wow, that's amazing. And now as an adult, I'm like, their electric bill must be like insane. You know, God bless them. And so we love to go look at lights. I mean, we so associate that with Christmas. So maybe and we do that for a reason, because the link between Christmas and lights is that the light came into the world. That's when the light arrived. And so the most Christmassy thing that you and I could do is not just put Christmas lights out, but be a light. And we are a light through our acts of love to those around us. And I think the biggest obstacle to that is not realizing the opportunities right in front of us. There are people all around us, and we just overlook the people right there in our lives. So this week we have a mission, and it's about that. Now, I keep losing track of these missions. Sometimes they're in a box, they're in a file cabinet, so I have made sure I put this week's mission in a very safe place. I put it actually in the safe, okay, because I don't want to lose it. And the whole point, again, of this mission is there's people around you. Don't miss the people right around you. There's opportunities all under your nose. So let me just get this here. Don't look at this combination. There's top secret information, but I have a mission here for you. Thank you very much. Now, in this mission, the point here is that there's people in your life that you may not even notice, okay? And don't look past those opportunities. Was there a person in there? No, I didn't think so. Okay. I thought I was just imagining things for a minute. Okay. Your mission this week is that there's people all around you that it is your mission to reach out and show acts of. Don't miss the people all around you right under your nose. So I want you to go ahead and grab your envelope. Those of you at the Cooper City headquarters, go ahead, and there's people that will be passing out your mission. And I want you to go ahead. It's safe. We've deactivated the devices in these envelopes. It is safe. Go ahead. Everyone needs one. It's not one per family. It's one per recruit. Everyone needs one of these. You can go ahead and open them now. And go ahead and pull out your mission. As you're getting those missions there in Cooper City, go ahead and open them when you get them, and we will read through your mission this week. Now, you've been given 2 missions already. This is your 3rd mission, recruits, to be a full-fledged agent, fully licensed. There are 5 total missions. If you missed mission 1 or 2, we have them at guest services at both campuses. You can pick up mission 1 and mission 2. But this is the 3rd mission that you need to complete to become a fully licensed agent. Here's what it says. You are needed for a special assignment. Please attend the next service, ready to train hard, take risks, and learn new skills in order to complete your mission. Your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to express generosity toward your neighbor. Below, we have added some ideas. Here's the range I want you to think about. What does it mean to express generosity to a neighbor? It's giving of yourself to someone around you. Well, who's my neighbor? Like literally, the people right around you, your actual neighborhood neighbors, your work neighbors, the person in the cubicle next to you, the office next to you, your friends, maybe your family members, the people all around you. Maybe you can give them a gift. Maybe you can give them thoughtful encouragement. Like take time to think through an encouragement. Give them your time. Maybe there's a way you can serve them, you can help them. Maybe you can give inclusion. What does that mean? Like welcoming them in. Maybe you can invite them to one of the elements of your family celebration. Maybe you can welcome them in. There are various ways, and that costs something to welcome someone in. Those are ways you can give them. Here's some creative ideas. Maybe you can walk their dog. Maybe you can offer to babysit. Maybe you can invite them to a celebration at your house. Bake them cookies, bring them coffee, invite them to church, be a listening ear and offer to pray for them. Write a sincere card, offer to help with yard projects. Maybe you can find a way this week, this is your mission, to find a way to give generously to a neighbor. Just give of yourself to someone and shine your light. That is how we shine our light. That's not an extra. That's not going overboard. That's the essence of shining our light. It's showing love like that. Now, I want to go back to that story that I shared with you at the beginning, and I want to close with this. That group of pastors from Denver, they all got together, they invited the mayor, and they're thinking like, of all these programs, what could we do? Here's what he said. The mayor said, the majority of the issues that our community is facing would be eliminated or drastically reduced if we could just figure out a way to become a community of great neighbors. Not a governmental program, not a new initiative, not a campaign slogan. The mayor said, from my vantage point, you could fix all of it if we could just teach people to love their neighbor. And he left, and the pastors were stunned. This is what they wrote as they recorded this. In a word, the mayor invited a room full of pastors to get their people to actually obey Jesus. Love your neighbor as yourself. Can it be that simple? I remember thinking, Jesus is a genius. He's asked to pick one commandment that is most important than all the others, and he shares something that would change the world if only every person who believes in Jesus would actually do it. What if we did it, City Rev? What if we just literally were not too busy to notice all the needs right around us and showed love, like real self-giving love? That's our mission for this week. As we think about this, it just hopefully makes you think about the person of Jesus and just all of the beauty and brilliance and magnitude of who Jesus is. All the complexity of this world, he makes it so simple for us. Just love God with everything you've got. And just be a person that loves deeply the people around you. He keeps it so simple. And that's something that he did. And he says, follow after me. But let's take a moment of reflection and prayer. Would you bow your head and close your eyes with me? If you're a follower of Jesus, let's ask ourselves this question. Will we do it? Will we be the light and show love, like real, true, self-giving love to people around us? Or will we say, that's an extra that I don't have time for? Maybe walk in the light. Maybe those of you who say, like, I think I'm still in the darkness, you can come into the light today, and it's just as simple as believe in Jesus. Believe that he's the light of the universe. He died and rose again to defeat the darkness. He's the light. Just believe in him, and you'll be born again, and you will follow after him in the light. And if you want to believe in Jesus, let me lead you in this prayer. Just silently where you're at, just say, just right there, whether you're Cooper City or here or watching online, just say, Jesus, I believe in you. I will walk in the light. I'll show love to others, but only because you first loved me. Thank you for saving me. I want to be reborn and start fresh following you. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, if you put your faith in Jesus just then, here's what we want to encourage you to do. If you're watching online, grab your cell phone, go to cityrev.org/faith. If you just fill out a couple questions, we're going to mail you a Bible so you can begin this journey. If you're here and you put your faith in Jesus, meet us in the front lobby at the guest services table. We will give you a Bible today, and we want to equip you as you're beginning this journey and following Jesus. We just want to celebrate with you. Church, as we close, we are going to sing about our incredible Savior, Jesus. We're going to end our time together lifting up his name. Would you stand with me as we close with this song?